Abby, I just don't get this politics homework.
Yeah.
So the Conservatives are offering us a referendum in 2017 on whether or not we should leave the EU, yeah?
Yeah.
But why would they offer it when we've been in the EU for 40 years with enough stability?
Well, it's always worth debating a question with two sides, though.
And these sides are...
Well, one side of the argument is that being in the EU is actually harming the country.
How?
For starters, there's immigration.
What about it?
In 2011, there are around 2.3 million citizens of the EU living in Britain, and in 2010, EU migration made up 27% of total influx of immigrants. With the issues of overcrowding and lack of housing already being a problem, some argue that leaving the EU would be a good way to cut down the number of people entering the country.
So leaving the EU would give us full control of our borders?
Exactly.
Yeah, but you need to remember that we take advantage of the free movement of people within the EU as well. There are over 1.8 million Brits dotted around Europe because being a member of the EU means we are allowed to live, work and retire in any EU member country. If we leave the EU, those people's rights will be restricted.
Ah, well then I guess...
But the same can be said of countries like Norway and Switzerland, and they aren't part of the EU, so they don't have to fork out over 8.6 billion a year to be a member, which is what it cost us last year.
Hang on, are you saying we pay...
Yeah, but countries like Norway and Switzerland have to follow some EU regulations without any hand in writing them. We, on the other hand, have 78 representatives in the European Parliament.
Right, that makes...
And yes, we pay a lot to be in the EU, but we make a lot more out of being part of the single market. It's worth over 400 billion a year to us, as it's our biggest trading partner for goods and services.
So...
Yeah, but then if we leave the EU, we can and still will do a huge amount of trading within Europe, and we'd be free to create new trading agreements with countries that aren't even in the EU, like China, Brazil and Russia, countries with some of the fastest growing economies in the world.
And if we cut off all ties with the EU, our exports are going to be subject to their tariffs. That's going to cost businesses.
Only the big businesses that do any trading with the EU, and that's only 10% of our economy. Leaving the EU would free the rest, the small and the medium companies, from following EU regulations, which cost them 10 times more per employee than it costs larger businesses. It's completely unfair.
What's unfair would be putting the millions of jobs in global manufacturing held by Brits at risk. Because that's what leaving the EU would do. Foreign-owned manufacturing industries like Nissan would move their production to inside the EU. And our influence in the world would decrease. If we weren't part of the EU, the UK accounts for less than 1% of the world's population, and our global income isn't much larger than 3%. If we leave the EU, then we're going to become pretty irrelevant in big international discussion about things that affect us all, like, I don't know, how we're going to deal with terrorism.
So we take up 1% of the world population.
Guys, we may be small, but we're still a big part of NATO and the UN Security Council.
And we've got nuclear power.
We don't need the EU to hold our hand to get our voices heard.
You say that, but when you think about...
Whoa.
What?
You guys have a lot to say about the EU.
It's a complicated subject.
It's a good thing that the earliest proposed referendum is in 2017.
Why?
We're not 18! If they held a referendum tomorrow, we'd have no say in the matter. And if we still might not if UKIP win the general election.
Wait, why is it that our views don't count again?
Apparently we don't know enough about it.
I stumbled quite a bit that time.